Will you welcome, please, Clayton, Thomas-Muller.
Yeah, baby. Just a disclaimer, I'm not the official spokesperson of Idle No More. That would be the four incredible women who founded the organization. I am one of dozens of campaigners from across this country called Canada that are organizing under this moniker. So, first and foremost, I wanted to thank from the bottom of my heart the organizers of the event, Ken, and everybody from Windsor that came together to create this space. Wanted to acknowledge, of course, this traditional land that we're all gathered in. I believe this is Anishinaabe territory. I don't know what the closest community is. Is it Wapol or? Ketchikan? Ketchikan. Okay, I just wanted to, in a good way, as a guest in this land, acknowledge those indigenous peoples whose territory that I'm in. And I wanted to open up with a song, if I could ask you for permission to do that. I brought my drum. And it's flat, sorry. I should have heated it up. Thank you for letting me share that song and bringing in that spirit in a good way.
What does it mean?
That is a turtle song, and in the way that I was raised, the turtle represents the teaching. They're philosophers, They're staring at the stars, and the turtle represents the teaching of truth, which is kind of what we're all here to talk about tonight. So, I'll begin. After a long period of resistance to colonialism and decades of devastation across this century, Indigenous communities here in Canada have reached a turning point. This is the culmination of specific struggles ranging from the white paper, some of you who are old enough might remember that, struggle and resistance to development and environmental racism in places like Grassy Narrows, the Mackenzie Valley, and James Bay in the 70s, through legal and constitutional struggles through the 1980s and 1990s. Some of you might remember the constitutional train that roared across this country, Native people talking about their rights. And a range of local struggles in the 1990s and into the 2000s. Indigenous communities in Canada have developed a complex ideological and legal framework for engaging with and resisting the colonial state. Today, across Canada, an unprecedented number of our communities have risen up against colonialism and the ecological devastation of our traditional lands. Here in Ontario, you have the communities like KI, Ardagh Algonquin,
Tyendinaga, Mohawk Territory, Six Nations, Grassy Narrows, Moose Cree, Temagami, Attawapaskat, amongst many others that have developed and deployed and organized political resistance to assert their right to say no to the despoiling of their traditional lands and to govern themselves in accordance with their own traditions. Across this country, the story is much the same, whether it's against dam development in northern Manitoba, where I come from, or in Labrador, or in the tar sands in Alberta, or uranium mining in Saskatchewan. And 30 years later, a generation after this country said no, the Mackenzie Valley gas pipeline in Denida, Northwest Territories, coal bed methane in the Skeena Valley in British Columbia, or fracking on the Blood Reserve in Alberta, or in Elzapokdog in New Brunswick, with the violence of the police state against women and children that is so fresh in all of our memories. Communities have confidently asserted their inherent and treaty rights, appealing both to traditional understandings of treaty and the intent of our ancestors in signing these treaties. There is potential now for a broad social movement that issues a challenge to Canadian capitalism, colonialism, and ecological destruction that is as profound as the broadest social movements in the past 40 years. Part of developing this movement is creating spaces for Indigenous communities to share experiences with each other and to strategize with each other outside of government-created bureaucracies. It's also important is the creation of a large body of supporters who are able to articulate and to understand the issues and to intervene in ways that support rather than bar the formation of a broader movement. Enter Idle No More. Since Idle No More achieved a 1-year anniversary on November 10th, just recently, we've been working hard, and yes, the corporate media likes to say that Idle No More is not as invigorated as it was last year. Where's Idle No More? I mean, they are always trying to set the goalposts and they continually move them. That's a whole other presentation. But I will tell you that in the last year, Idle No More has been able to accumulate our own internal database of 257,000 supporters. And these are all people that have attended Idle No More events, signed up to join the movement through our very sophisticated website, and taken some online action or an action out in the streets, out in the land, supporting this beautiful young social movement. Our Twitter account has 20,000 followers, and our official Facebook groups combined has over 500,000 followers. Yeah. And this is all really amazing stuff, because Idle No More, well, you know, it's not exactly, I mean, how many of y'all heard of Rosa Parks? Yeah. And how many of y'all heard the story? Rosa Parks, oh, she was tired. She's like, oh, damn it, I'm so tired. I got no time to think about racial apartheid. Screw that, I'm going to sit on the front of the bus. And boom, the civil rights movement started. You heard that story, right? Show of hands. Yeah.
No, it's not true.
Well, same thing with Idle No More. You all heard the story. 4 brave women, 3 First Nations, 1 from a settler background, got sick and tired of hearing about this ridiculous policy agenda of the Harper conservative extremist government in the form of Bill C-45, and decided to do something about it, to organize workshops in communities in Saskatchewan, and to start the Twitter campaign with the hashtag Idle No More, and boom, big movement, right? Well, it's just like Rosa Parks. Okay, that's not the case. Rosa Parks was a sophisticated civil rights activist that was taking action as part of a broad movement machinery, okay? Well, she was sitting on that bus, you know, there were people sitting at lunch counters having food dumped on their heads in Mississippi and Alabama and all kinds of stuff. It's the same thing with Idle No More. Networks like Defenders of the Land, the international Indigenous-led campaign against the tar sands in Alberta, all of these things, Indigenous Sovereignty Week, and of course the legacy of the work of our aunties and uncles that have been organizing on these issues, and all of these historic representations of Indigenous resistance I listed at the beginning of my presentation have all led to this moment in time that has created the infrastructure necessary for us to escalate our Indigenous social movement. And it's a very exciting time. And on the matter of Idle No More, I will say this. There is a powerful connection between the fact that our Indigenous social movement is being led by our Indigenous women and the introduction, the reintroduction of that sacred feminine creative principle into the body of our politic, our economics, our social systems, and I would even argue our spiritual systems, that leadership represents, directly confronting patriarchy in our society. It's a very powerful thing. Especially in a time when the state of Canada and this federal government refuses to address the violence against Indigenous women in this country. Over 600 murdered and missing women. Shame on this government and shame on the police apparatus of this government for not finding justice for those families. But the metaphor between that failure of the state and the economic policies driving our economy right now that have impacted everybody in this community in the manufacturing sector, these extractive industries, raw export style economic policies that represent the most violent acts against our most sacred mother, Mother Earth. There is a connection, and that is why Idle No More and the leadership of Indigenous women is so incredibly profound during this moment in history. Now, on the matter of workers in extractive industry sectors, now I'm talking about energy, forestry, and mining. In my opinion, this fight against corporate power is not about workers. Our people are in a state of economic blackmail by these companies and the policy approval, oversight, and enforcement legal regime that they are self-managing due to a lack of government oversight. This is especially prevalent in places like the Alberta tar sands and now everywhere across Canada in a post-Bill C-45 era. If presented with options, I do not believe that our people would choose to gain their livelihood from poisoning our water, our earth, air, and self. They would rather have those sacred things remain healthy so that they could continue to sustain our children forever. The fight against corporate power must target corporate CEOs, corporate boards, shareholders, and the banks that finance them through an economic paradigm that tells us it's okay to sacrifice people, the commons, our values, and everything under grandfather's son at the altar of irresponsible resource development and economic policy. This economic system allows these individuals who all have addresses, names, and telephone numbers, I'm just saying, to continue to make profit and line their pockets at the expense of frontline communities, of workers, of the environment, and of the health of our ecology and our own well-being. And at the highest levels of governance, there are structural reinforcements that allow this uneven playing field to continue. Our workers need and deserve a just transition to a sustainable livelihood, just as much as First Nations deserve to be compensated for the harm that has been externalized on our people, air, water, and lands and way of life, and to have no meddling in our sovereignty and self-determination over these things. And let's be real about this. We need to be a lot more clear about what a real just transition strategy means to labor in this country. We got to get that real clear. And in the end, what Idle No More as a movement is talking about is the radical redistribution of wealth and land. Land ownership and wealth that was amassed with stolen Indian lands through slave labor and gunboat diplomacy, and in many instances, outright genocide. Imagine what will happen When the workers of these lands in this country called Canada unite with the true owners of these lands, Indigenous peoples. Imagine what would happen when we converge the collective rights of workers with our own considerable constitutionally protected rights and social movement tactical framework. Imagine the kind of political, economic, social, and spiritual people power we could wield together. Workers and Indigenous nations must unite for a successful movement in this country. Because we're going to have to dig a lot deeper if we want to find the real rot in our political system. I'm talking here about to the degree which for-profit corporate power has crept into and now captured our system of policy making and democratic governance in this country. All you have to do is to look at the policy making systems in Ottawa or in provincial capitals to see who's really calling the shots in Canada today. And that's what happened with the two omnibus bill pieces of legislation, Bill C-38 and Bill C-45 last year. And during the crucial periods when these two super laws were winding their way through Parliament, the official record shows that big oil companies like Suncor, pipeline companies like Enbridge, and their industry associations like CAP were having high-level meetings and communications with cabinet ministers and senior government personnel at a rate of 463 to 1. Compared with environmental groups, let alone First Nation governments. Simply put, my friends, the political system in this country is corrupt. We do not live in a democratic state. Instead, we're living in a corporate state, or more precisely, a petro state. And it's time we recognize this together. As Indigenous peoples, as workers, as people that are concerned about our environment that we share, it's time we realize that we cannot fight and win these battles on our own. It's time that we come out of our silos, that we link arms and forge a common front against the tyranny of corporate power in this country called Canada. And I cannot describe how excited I am about these times. It's a time of extraordinary flux, laden with potentialities. These are times when transformations and revolutions, real revolutions, take place. But the energies must be harnessed and they must be directed appropriately. And they must bring together the right mix of vision, strategy, and democratic organizing with a convergence of different movements putting forward a clear vision for radical transformation. The dream I have, in conclusion, for us all has its roots deep in reevaluating the relationship which industrialization has damaged the most. The relationship that we all collectively share with the sacredness of Mother Earth. It involves deepening our understanding of systems of oppression that keep us from coming together, such as race, class, and gender power dynamics. It involves us coming up with comprehensive strategies that embrace an intergenerational approach to strengthening our movement for justice. It involves us not sacrificing one population and their way of life so that others can thrive. And finally, in conclusion, it involves us learning from our past, preparing in our present to defend our children's future. Let's start making waves together tonight, ladies and gentlemen.